Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here at Watchbox Reviews. I would really appreciate it, and I promise to update daily. If you love this watch, you can see it and you can purchase it at thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing a modern marvel, the horological avant-garde, albeit finished and created with the most traditional of methodologies. This is the Greubel Forsey Tourbillon 24 Secondes Asymetrique, a timepiece 43.5 millimeters in white gold. For some, this will be manna from heaven. For others, overpowering. Whether you take it or leave it, my job is going to be to unpack everything that makes this watch a standout and extraordinary. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you can see it does fit. This is a watch I can recommend for a wrist as small as 15 centimeters circumference. It's thick, it's 16.3 millimeters, but it will fit underneath the jacket. Lug to lug, it's actually quite reasonable at 51.7 millimeters. I expected more like 54, 55 across the wrist. So this watch is wearable on a smaller wrist, even a wrist slightly smaller than mine. The spacing between the lugs is about 23 millimeters. I say about because it's clearly a custom spacing, so you're probably going to have a custom strap made or go with an OEM piece. The OEM piece is large rectangular scale alligator leather, semi-gloss, monotone stitch. You can see it features a sheer cut edge showing the layers of construction. Very thick cut. This is a brand new Greubel Forsey factory strap calfskin on the underside. The clasp itself is as massive and redoubtable as the watch. You can see branded internally, it features a curved chassis to arc under your wrist and trace the arc of your wrist. A double fold, you can see that it's a handsome piece, self-consciously styled, anything but a default design. The bridge is raised over the flanking prongs so that it sits flat and flush rather than stacking up once bolted down to your wrist. And of course, being a double fold, it's both more compatible with a small wrist than a single fold and secures the watch against droppage while donning or removing. The case band can only be described as extravagant. You can see the lugs are probably the most distinctive portion other than the lateral viewport for the tourbillon itself, and we'll get back to that. But I want to emphasize the lugs. They're actually concave and mirror polished, so they visually pare down the mass, but they also give the watch a little bit of a pinched or wasp-waisted aesthetic around its lugs that sets it apart from almost anything else in the industry and does visually reduce the apparent mass. You can see that the satin finish is vertical, not longitudinal, and the mid-case is stepped out from both the bezel and the case back. The timepiece featuring a Greubel Forsey crown that is both engraved and lacquered, so what you're looking at is actually lacquer inside wells. The bezel sits somewhat flush and countersunk within the hoods of the lugs, so you can see that the lugs are actually able to extend upward to give them a fuller figure, and then the bezel is sunk below the hoods of the lugs to prevent the watch from being outrageously thick. It's thick, it's just not outrageously thick. The dial is an anthracite gray, and you can see several different focal planes, the highest being the hands at center. The hands are all white gold. The register for the power reserve, the 72-hour power reserve, that's actually satin finished, engraved, and lacquered white gold. And then you can see that all the indices as well as the Greubel Forsey logo and Arabic numeral 12 are polished white gold. Several different planes outboard, the power reserve and the hands being the highest, and then you sink down until you finally reach the tourbillon. And the tourbillon is angled at 25 degrees so that as it circulates, making one complete circuit every 24 seconds, we may as well get super close because this deserves a close-up, but it makes one circuit every 24 seconds. The combination of the high-speed tourbillon and that critical angle both combine to equalize the effects of gravity, effectively regaining the chronometry purpose of the original Louis Breguet tourbillon. So this is both a beautiful tourbillon and a very precise one. You have that sapphire viewport in the side that lets you admire it, including from the underside. It beats away at 21,600 vibrations per hour, and the twin fast barrels, we'll talk about what that means in a moment, but they propel this system 24 seconds per circuit for 72 hours, and there is an overcoil hairspring and a free sprung balance to take 6-position adjustment, better than a chronometer, and hold it in the face of bumps and disruptions on the wrist. The overcoil also helps to equalize gravity alongside the angle of the tourbillon and the tourbillon action itself. The bridge is black polished, continuously rounded. It's known as specular finish, and you can see there's a satin finish to the walls of the movement underneath the plane of the dial. Turn it all over, and you can see Greubel Forsey is very traditional in its finishing and materials, but unconventional and hyper-modern in the styles it employs. First, you can see that this movement, which is known as the Greubel Forsey GF01, 36 jewels, 24-second inclined tourbillon, and all of the bridges are in my-short, which is to say it's what you call German silver if it were in a Langa. It's then rhodium plated to create the silver look you see here, and it's frosted to give it distinction from conventional movements which generally use Côte de Genève. You can see hand-finished, engraved and lacquered number plate as well as builder's plate. There's an engine-turned perlage across the base plate. There are interior angles, and you can go crazy counting them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We could go on, and there are more on the other side. But my point is, alongside black polish, which is applied to the tourbillon cage itself, as well as the tourbillon bridge, those interior angles are the difficult task, ranking at the very top of the difficulty list for the most experienced virtuosos of watch finishing. Beginners don't do this. Average finishers do not do this. You'll also note that the jewels are set in chaton. Twin high-speed barrels help to relieve the effects of varying torque over the life of the mainspring wind, so the barrels each make a rotation in 3.2 hours. Twin mainspring barrels also ensure that the torque release is very even from max wind to minimum wind, and there's a decoupling system, so if you do accidentally, in your exuberance to wind the watch, overwind it, you can't accidentally break a mainspring or damage it. The decoupler prevents you from doing that. Every manual wind watch should have this. You'll also note that not only are the bridges finished within their interior angles, but the edge of each one is a huge, fat, rounded, mirrored anglage, so large and optically smooth, you can appreciate it without resorting to a loop. You can see those edges gleaming and glinting. The screws are both oversized and kiln-fired to create that true fired blue aesthetic rather than chemically dyed. You won't see chemically dyed screws on a Greubel Forsey. The spokes of the wheels themselves are hand-chamfered, and there's a handsome circular Côte de Genève just below the plate on the back. You'd see just below the bridge on the back, there's actually a large and beautifully finished abrasive wheel circular Côte de Genève, and at the very pit on the base plate, an engine-turned perlage. This is a gorgeous watch, an overpowering watch, a polarizing watch, and a beautiful watch. You can appreciate the parts, the finish, you can appreciate the goal of the Greubel Forsey manufacturer and not want this watch. But if you appreciate all of the above, and you've got the wrist for it, the budget, and the sensibility to actually find this design in line with your affection, then it's the total package. It's the perfect watch. If you love the way it looks, nothing else will disappoint. See it and live the dream on the Watchbox.